What's up, guys? This is D22-soso, Wayne Chiang of Live Like Poker Stream. This is my VIP guest, Jen Shahade.
Hey
So,
guys, hey, thank you for having me.
sure, you're like super hardcore gamer. Like, geez, like I was going down your credit list and I was reading all this stuff and it crashed my computer because you have so many.
Yeah, well, I've been around.
So you have also authored two books. Um, sorry, I was about to say poker bitch, chess bitch, and play like a girl. And you also co-authored the art of chess. And
Yeah,
you are
I mean, writing is one of my first loves. So I definitely had some of the most incredible experiences writing, especially Chess Bitch. That was the first book wrote, and not the first book I read. It was the first book I wrote, and it was very meaningful to me because what I was doing was I was taking this crazy world of chess and showing how you can look at chess and see every kind of major issue in feminism come to life.
wow.
And yeah, it was, and then I also talked about my own life, growing up through the game. And I reread it or certain chapters from time to time. Some have dated better than others, but I definitely am impressed by how well I wrote at that age. Because I was pretty young. I just graduated college basically.
And you went to NYU, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you are one of the few people with a strong chess and poker background, and you have an insight that probably not many people have competing in both.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a decent number of people who competed in both, but I think I've been really, really embedded in this. I think more than not knowing, like I think a lot of people actually know the games of chess and poker well, but I think where I'm particularly unique, maybe, or not totally unique, but more unique, is that I am a little bit more extroverted than most chess players. So I feel like I really got to know the subculture of poker really well. Like I know a lot about the people and how it works and all that. Whereas I think a lot of chess players, they came into poker, got good at the game, made some money, and left. Whereas I feel like I could write another book about the poker world. Like I got to know a lot of the people.
Uh-oh. That's probably not a good thing, but
It's been interesting, definitely.
So your chess accomplishments, let's see. You were in 2002 you won the US Women's Chess Championships. Um, you were second in US Women the second one in the next US Women's Championship. You earned your second international master norm, and in 2004 you won the second US Women's Chess Championship.
Yeah, I won 2 US Women's Championships, and I was the first female ever to win the US Junior Open Championship. So those are probably my three biggest chess accomplishments. Also, I was on the silver medal Olympic team. Yeah, so I think those four. And another thing that was very meaningful to me when I was growing up was being on the national high school championship team. I really wanted to win the national high school championship, never did it, but I was on the winning team.
And now you're sponsored by PokerStars. So in order to get sponsored by PokerStars, you have to be a chess world champion, right?
Well, yeah, I think it helped because obviously they hired me to be their Mind Sports ambassador. And that actually at the time was kind of interesting because what we were doing was we were holding these amazing chess tournaments in the Isle of Man, in the PokerStars headquarters. And since then, PokerStars doesn't sponsor the events anymore, but it was really the beginning of something amazing because those tournaments are just among the most anticipated now, with many of the best players in the world playing, including Magnus Carlsen. So I kind of came into PokerStars to, show some of these overlaps between poker and chess, and also to help organize that particular event.
It was more of a joke because so many poker players aspire to be sponsored by one of these big sites, and then you just rolled in. But you were definitely chess first, and then about when did you transition into learning more about poker?
No, I'm just kidding. I learned poker from my brother, who was a professional player back in the day in the poker boom. And at the beginning, I think unusually I didn't really gravitate towards it right away. I kind of dabbled in poker for many, many years. Probably particularly like up until around 2013, maybe 2012. I got more serious about it. But I started to study a lot around that time, and then I got really into open face for 2 years, and I kind of stopped really studying No Limit, and then I got back into studying No Limit after that. So that's kind of been my progression.
So you won the first Tony Bet open face Chinese poker tournament, high roller event.
Yeah, I was really proud of that because I feel like more than anything in open face, it's such a different time now, I have to say. At that time, open face poker, like I literally, without a math background, I watched some videos about like combinatorics and probability theory. I just watched them, like basic videos or like basically for high school students. But you combine that with like being like one of the first people to study this degenerate game. And I actually was way ahead of the curve. I was like, especially when it came to like the theory of open face and understanding the end of the game, I was probably just like one of the best players at the very beginning. Sometimes my opening sets were a little weak, but I really had a leg up in how to play perfectly, or not perfectly, but how to like figure out how to play well after that. And I was kind of excited when short deck came out a few years ago because I was like, wow, I can do the same thing in short deck. But times have changed, Like I feel like as soon as that game materialized, there were like big groups of people working on it. So the day of like a woman in her bedroom with a calculator and some math videos, it didn't really seem applicable anymore. And that was only 3 years difference. 3 years.
It's crazy.
But people believe in math now. They believe so much more in it.
It's definitely a major aspect because it's like one of the things about poker and chess I've said in this podcast is like as long as the human race exists, these two games will have an interest level. Like people always say chess is dying, poker is dying. Just like because of the finite set of variables, you could just like pick it up at any age and just like make a go at it. And I think most people, especially who are into games, have the intellectual curiosity to like at least dabble with these and figure out which of the sides they prefer, the complete information or incomplete information.
Yeah, absolutely. I like things about both of them. So people do often ask me, what do I like better, chess or poker? And I've kind of like mastered an answer because I get the question so often. But I like the way I like the conclusion I've come to, which is that I love the game of chess more, like the purity of the game. It's an art. It can be very beautiful. Like chess itself can be an art. So you don't actually have to play somebody. You can just create these incredible configurations of checkmate using your pieces and using the board as a canvas. Like that's how you can say, okay, chess is clearly an art. But the poker, it's about the cliche about it's a game of people played with cards, right? And the fact that you can use it as a mirror to understand yourself, I think is unparalleled, and even more you can learn about yourself from poker than from chess, because chess is a very abstract game. Most of us can learn that we're not very good at chess by playing chess. We can learn that. And a couple other more specific things. But poker, you can understand about desire, your relationship to money, your relationship to like patience and fear and other people and intimidation. So many of those things, I think, you can learn from the game of poker.
Do you have any opinions on like artificial intelligence invading chess and poker?
Well, yeah, it's a problem in both games, no doubt. In chess, we see a huge boom during these times of pandemic, which it's nice to see my fellow chess players able to make more income than other people in the pandemic because their hobby's actually booming. So that's nice to see. I mean, of course, it's not nice to see so many people lose their jobs and savings. But I think that what we've also seen in the pandemic is that there are a lot of issues with cheating and fair play. So in chess, and they're trying really hard to to crack down on it. But it's brutal because as you crack down on it, you also hurt people's reputations. And this is such a, I'm not saying we should be soft on cheaters, we shouldn't be, but it's sad to see. It's sad to see that it's happening, and then it's sad to see what it does to the player's reputation, because it's over then. You know, you can't really come back from that in chess. And you can start playing again, but your name will always have that asterisk on it. And especially when it's like young people, it's hard when you get this mob mentality against the cheaters, and like sometimes it's very young players. So yeah, it's a big problem in chess, but you know, I think that they're using techniques actually that are quite interesting, because they're what people tried to use to prove that Paso was guilty, right? And they were very successful in the court of public opinion, but you know, apparently that logic and math didn't win over yet. But in chess, they use a similar concept. Like, what is a chance that a person who's not Magnus Carlsen can play perfectly for X number of moves? And then in chess, you also have this other variable, time. So, you know, you're playing better than Magnus Carlsen for 20 games, and you're playing better than Magnus at a time control of 2 minutes per game. At some point, it is impossible, right?
Wow.
So, and that's what they use to prove that somebody is not playing fair. And I think that's exactly the same thing. Like, you're able to make like one insane call on the river, right? But doing it over and over and over again, at some point, it is impossible. It just the statistics are so wildly abnormal that it's like if you flip a coin and 5,000 times in a row it's heads, then we know that the coin is messed up.
I think it's like a valiant move to like try to expose the cheating. It's for the long term and the health of the game. It needs to happen, so it discourages people to even head down that path. Because I feel like people who cheat, they don't. It's not like a one-day decision. It's like a slow progression. They get away with like something small and something smaller, and then they just can't stop. Versus like scaling back.
Yeah, you know, I try to think about the psychology of the cheater a lot myself too, and I think there's another thing going on which I think is really interesting that people don't talk about a lot. I think that a cheater thinks that they're not feeling that well that day, but under normal circumstances, they would see the right move. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think there's like a self-justification going on. Like, I'm good enough to see this incredible move, but today I just need a little bit of a leg up. I'm tired, or other people are doing it. Like, there's just like some weird justification that like, I did see it. I just needed to double check, you know? And yeah, I think that that certainly understanding the psychology can help us, I guess, figure out how to stop people from doing it.
I guess I don't understand the chess side so much.
Yeah.
In poker, it's like different. It's like, you know, if two people at the table, you know each other, they could like share cards. There's like angle shooting. There's just been, you know, recent incidents of detecting the whole cards and stuff like that. So it's just like, I guess for poker, it's like in a game of incomplete information, trying to get that more complete information rather than whatever the strategic move is for like an AI. I guess that should be a human opponent. So very interestingly too, you have two award-winning podcasts. One is Ladies Night with a K. That was very clever.
Thank you.
So most of your guests on Ladies Night are women, and I saw Daniel Wrench was in there and like somebody else. Was that to bring them to the forefront, give them a voice?
Well, yeah, I think that men really don't talk enough, so they need it. I'm just kidding. Especially Danny Wrench. He really needs to get his words out there, right? No, the reason we had it, by the way, Danny Wrench, we do love Danny. He is the chief chess officer at chess.com, but he does love to talk. I mean, that's what he does for a living. But okay, the reason I had men on Ladies Night is because men can be pushing women's issues forwards too. So, it's interesting to hear them talk about what they want to do to get more women in the game. I also had James Altucher on. And I think that's it so far. But we'll get another man on there. We will. It's a little harder though, Wayne, because the thing about getting a man on a podcast like Ladies Night is you end up talking to them about women's issues. And honestly, that's not really my goal with the podcast Ladies Night. It's to talk about the person and see interesting things about them, and then maybe a little bit of interweaving of issues of women in chess. Because there's nothing more boring for a female chess player than to come onto a podcast and be like, well, what do you think of women's tournaments? What do you think of women's titles? What's it like being a woman in chess? I'm not going to sit there and ask them all those questions, right? So we're just gonna talk about their life and what's up with them and what tips they might have, and then we'll sprinkle in where it makes sense. But if I have a man on a podcast called Ladies Night, it's a little trickier. I almost kind of have to ask them what they think about that stuff.
So, yeah, one of the women, like, obviously games in general and tech are male-dominant industries. So I do often ask women, like, we visually see, especially in the poker world, how they're mistreated. But do you have any comments on, like, the chess world?
On women's treatment in the chess world?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could certainly use some work, but I think it's interesting to think about whether or not, like, obviously women in the world there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed, from the very, very grave and serious to the more minor, but that have really big symbolic importance. So yeah, and they certainly exist in chess as well. I think that there's sexual harassment, there's people objectifying women too much. There's all sorts of issues, but there's also some women who get into these games and find that they can really thrive in them because they're one of the few women. So I think there are negatives and positives, but I like to really attack those negatives so that we can expand our audience in chess. Yeah. Was that your question? Like, what issues do women have in chess?
Yeah, because mainly when I have women on this podcast, and we delve to that subject, it's usually what happens is a guy is losing, or a guy is already expressing toxic behavior, berates some of the women, and then a lot of the guys at the table, like, especially in this era, don't really know what to do. Like, don't know how to act, because most of the guys are good guys and they don't want this to happen, but it's just like, do you interject, do you not interject, do you call a floor? Like, because sometimes women are like, don't talk for me, and other times they're like, why didn't you speak up? So in chess, it's more of a one-on-one situation, or since you have an audience, like, people will attack you publicly.
Yeah, I do get attacked a lot, like on online and stuff. Yeah, I think it's tricky in poker, and Jamie Kurtstetter and her podcast said something that I liked about how maybe if you have the girls or the woman of course in poker phone number, you could like text and say, like, you want me to step in, so that you're not like just making it more distracting and uncomfortable if she's not really in the mood. I have to say that's not my biggest. I've never had a big issue with that in poker. I've had guys say really inappropriate things to me in the table. Rarely has it really bothered me that much, but that doesn't mean that I'm mitigating the experience of any other woman who it does bother. I will say though, I think that one thing that has bothered me is more people that are really good at poker, or who are, you start to become friends with, and finding out that they have like no real interest in being friends with you. Like that, I think that kind of thing is more painful in a way to me. Like the more like big fish issues than like just playing at a poker table and somebody being rude to you. That doesn't really get to me. I think there are a lot of bigger issues around that kind of lead up to that point, including a lot of women not having the opportunity to play at all because they just have less money than men. So there's less of us there. So it's easier for us to be singled out in these kind of like skewed gender dynamics.
Yeah, definitely agree. And your poker podcast, The Grid, won Gold Poker Awards for the best podcasts. And you have a really interesting concept, which is you have combinations of pre-flop cards. So every guest gets a pre-flop hand, and then once that hand is exhausted, you no longer can hit that hand. You have to keep going until the grid is filled.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really excited about it. It's fun so far. It's gonna get really hard towards the end though. But it's like an art project as well as a podcast. And I was really grateful to win the award because there's so many amazing poker podcasts out there. But yeah, I really enjoy it. I think that I have so many like emails and little things that I need, little communications that I do every day. The idea to just like sit down with somebody and talk to them for 45 minutes um, is a real gift to me. It's obviously something that I put out there on Apple and all these different platforms. And we just started putting them on YouTube as well. But also, it's just fun for me because normally I don't get to sit down and like think about one or two things for 45 minutes. Everything's so scattered. So and right now I get to do that with you as well.
I appreciate it. And you had one on your YouTube, which is Bill Perkins, who is a fan favorite in both chess and poker. But I was watching it, and then I saw Dan Bilzeri in the background. I think it was like,
yeah, he just popped in. Yeah, you think you're interviewing Bill Perkins, and then what happens? By the way, I'm looking at the chat, and I see Kim Cox say that being a female in poker is not easy and already a disadvantage when I sit down. Yeah, I definitely sympathize with women who aren't comfortable. What I'd say is that the problem with the way that women are treated in poker is that we don't really get to see the women who are like a little bit more introverted or don't like this kind of like aggressive attention. We see a very similar personality type in poker, and it's important to have diversity of personalities, not just diversity of gender and race and age. You really want to get all certain types of people, and I think in women, the way that they're treated at the poker table, you're kind of like shutting out a bunch of them, and that's not good.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just reading a chat. Yeah, shout out to Kim Cox. We're gonna have her on tomorrow too, so we could ask her about
Oh, Kim, I didn't know that. Huh.
She's a chat reg, but I try to get these chat people to also participate in these things as well. So who are your most interesting guests on the grid?
Oh my God, we've had so
I
many.
know there's so many. I was just looking at them and there's like a bajillion. So
yeah, let me pick out a few of my favorites though. I really liked one of the things I love about the grid is it's taught me how to try to take whoever I'm talking to and find out what they're most interested in, what really makes them excited, and talk about that. So I had a lot of fun with this woman, Helen Ellis, who's actually an author and a very strong amateur poker player, but she's a hilarious writer. And she just really got me. I also, of course, loved having Nick Schulman on. He talked about Jack 4 offsuit, so a real trash hand. I noticed that in general, like the better the player, like a lot of times the worse the hand.
Oh yeah, I mean.
and the guy who just won, of course, a friend of mine, he just won a WSOP bracelet, Dan DeVoris, talked about ace 5 suited. That was another favorite of mine as well. So yeah, I'd say those. And we got a really good response for Liv Marie as well. As yeah, she's great because I love getting people on who just have that perspective. She's now successful in not just poker, but also in speaking and like kind of making science more mainstream. And she doesn't really travel the poker circuit now, so it was just great to catch up with her.
Yeah, I watched that one, and I keep track. I was on Brain Games with her, National Geographic Brain Games. She's like really fast. Sometimes it's like weird because like now I watch her stuff more of like I just watch her stuff, and then I just like comment, and she's like, "Hey," I'm just like, "Oh, I really don't have much to say because like what she does is really good." Like her YouTube channel with all the science with like the most recent was like regarding coronavirus, like positive negatives and negative positives. But I don't know if Eric, Daniel, and Jay told you, but we were gonna have like a chess themed live at the bike, but there's always something in the way. And I think you're on the East Coast, and those guys are in Northern California, and live at the bike's in LA. So we want to get like Eric Alabest, Daniel Wrench, Jay Severson, like you, some other like people with chess and poker backgrounds, and just like watch how you guys interact on the felts.
Yeah.
Did they tell you about this or?
Yeah, they did, and I would love to. Be in that game because I played Mafia with you guys, and I think I can take all your money.
So that was a really
no. Like it is gonna be hard though because now with the pandemic, like when are people gonna travel to play live poker? Maybe some will do soon, but I think that people will start doing essential travel first for visiting people they haven't seen in a while. So we might have to figure out some kind of online game, maybe another Mafia, up the stakes, and have that keep going until we finally get to play in person. And by that time, we're gonna be able to have really good reads on people. By the way, funny enough, I didn't know, but it looks like Helen Ellis is actually in the chat. How awesome is that? That's like a really great coincidence. I did not know that. I mean, if I'd known that she was in the chat, I would have also said it was one of my favorite episodes. But now I didn't know. She wrote American Housewife and The Southern Lady Code. So yeah, they're both hilarious.
Yeah, you never know who's in the chat. I'll like say something random, and then just like 5 to 10 people, and they'll pop up, and just like I'm like, whoa. That Mafia situation was pretty funny. It was like the first time I got to interact with you live, and shout out to Play Mafia, created by Jay Saverson, the co-founder of chess.com CTO. So Greg, your brother, was there. Daniel Wrench was there. Jay Severson, a bunch of people. Like, how do you like playing with people you know, or are more strangers?
I feel like I want to mix. Like, I think just like in the poker game, you want to mix. Like, well, first of all, obviously you want mostly players that are, just having fun. But from like a production point of view, if I'm thinking about it more from like a show, I feel like it's great to have a mix. Like some people who are really serious about the game, some people who are just like drinking and having fun, and some people who are somewhere in between. I think that's perfect because then you've got all these different types of energies kind of clashing. And I know you're a producer, so you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. But it was. I told everybody that I misread whether I was Mafia or Citizen, so I actually thought I was Citizen. So if I knew I was Mafia, I would have played it totally differently.
Yeah, that struck me because I had a vibe that you were Citizen. So at least I was right about that.
You read me right. Yeah, you read me right, and I was trying to do a thing, and it was pretty ironic because I knew Jay was Mafia because I've known the guy for like over 20 years, and he's just like so honest and straight. For him to like even attempt to lie, I'm just like, oh, come on, man. But I didn't really know what to do. But if I knew I was Mafia, like I think we would have just murdered everybody.
Lying is hard. It is not easy. Poker teaches you to do it better, but it's never easy. Which is why people always kind of like guess. Like if you need to guess on a level, in average, you should guess on the honesty level because a lot of people will somehow default to one of those odd levels that equate with honesty because it's easier to perform, especially if you're performing for like a longer amount of time.
I think, like you mentioned before, poker has really big insight to your own personality. So a lot of your own tendencies, how you view games, you view life, and a lot of your blind spots like really come out in poker. And because when we see our opponents, we have a tendency to underrate their abilities no matter what level they're at. Everybody tends to overrate their own ability, which creates a lot of ego clashes.
But I think that's important. I feel like we always need to overrate our ability because otherwise we would, be unable to wake up in the morning. I think the real reason is that people rate themselves more at their A game and they rate other people at their average game, which would be maybe B or C, depending on how much energy you have and how like wide a range you have. Right? Like some people are pretty consistent and their default play is kind of more, the same no matter what. And some people are going to oscillate wildly. But when you're rating yourself like focus, good frame of mind. And yeah, that's the fundamental attribution error, right? In psychology. I think I got that right. That you attribute other people's mistakes to personality or intellectual flaws, and your own are aberrations. And of course, both theories are true. It's just that they're both true in for your opponent and for you. So, but I think that's good. It's good to have that delusion in some sense, because if you didn't have that delusion, it would be very difficult to get yourself to the point where you'd be comfortable playing poker.
Yeah, I guess there's always that like gambler's fallacy. Like if you lose in the not the fallacy, but negative reinforcement. If you lose a lot in the beginning, you tend to quit, and if you get lucky in the beginning, you tend to, attribute more to ability.
True. That is a big thing about poker as well. By the way, Mick Partridge Boy says that he's new to poker and he's coming from chess. And he says he watched me on the St. Louis Chess Club channel for years. Well, hello and welcome to a little bit of poker fun. Hope you're enjoying this game as well. Poker is so much fun when you start playing. There's like when you first start the game and you start
when you first start,
get it. Yeah.
And then when you see how much time people spend on it now, it's it's pretty daunting. If you were to encourage somebody to learn chess starting from scratch, what process would you encourage?
Oh boy, probably to start, just be deliberate about it, like, and take a lot of notes, and have like opening like a notebook that's kind of in the cloud, or if you want to use a hard copy, like for it to be, really give yourself a lot of space for openings, middle games, and end games, and then kind of work through all of the different stages at once. So, you can come back, you start with maybe some tactics, because that's kind of the easiest thing to test yourself on and to get quickly good at. So that's like your middle game. But then after you've done that for a while, hop to the end game and then hop back to the opening, but make sure you're taking notes along the way. It's not easy. I mean, chess improvement is extremely difficult. It's very, very frustrating. I think it's weird because in some ways it's even harder than poker, because like in poker, you can figure out a spot that you're playing wrong and kind of like adjust it, and it's going to come up pretty quickly. In chess, it's a little harder to do that. You could do that with like some openings, but then you have to get lucky enough that your opponent plays that opening against you. The rest of chess improvement is like so holistic. It's like you're training yourself to think better. And yeah, that's a real hard task. I mean, think about that, especially for an adult, that you need to learn to think better. Like most people, their ways of thinking are born from like years of habit of getting the life that they want, because that's why they have the life that they want. So switching that up just to win a word game, it's almost like this cognitive riddle.
Plus how far you can go. What do you have any opinions on what makes Magnus Carlsen so good in this generation?
Oh, I mean, everything. He's got an amazing memory, an amazing drive. Started when he was really young. Just really a great, amazing talent, hard work, and his memory is also like perfect. So all of these kind of factors working together. He's very practical too. I think that's like the new thing that he brings to the game, compared to other world champions before him. Like of course, a lot of players are very practical, but he brings it to like poker-like levels, where if he sees a situation where he can exploit a player by making, if there's 4 different moves and they're all equal strength, but one of the moves allows for more mistakes, he's going to find that move that allows for the most mistakes. It's very practical. Whereas some players might be more like, okay, well, they're all about the same, so it doesn't matter as much which I play. But Magnus is going to find that extra one. And that's very poker-esque too, because it reminds you of like looking at some kind of grid on pile or another solver and seeing that like you can do this and that. And then you're like, well, wait, but okay, I can do those things, mixed strategy, but which one is more likely to make my opponent screw up? And then maybe I'll gear towards that. Another way that he approximates a poker player is that he likes games to last a long time. So he'll play openings that are like really, a lot of people call them boring because they're slower.
Okay.
Not always, but he'll play a little slower opening. And then the game length is kind of like just elongated a little bit. So you maybe are having an average of a 60 move game instead of a 45. And probably not quite 60, but you know what I'm saying. He's adding some moves onto the game. And that kind of reminds me of how the better players will, of course, do a little better when there's more blinds. So I think that, and I think Magnus like kind of, that's why he does that, because he feels like the more moves this exists, the more likely you are to make a mistake.
There's definitely that in especially competitive poker too. Like a lot of the people who play in competitive fields, mid and high stakes, like have a lot of tricks in their bag, and they definitely know which opportunities to do them. And that's one of the things when people take shots, whether to the mid stakes or to the high stakes, they don't realize that a lot of their competitors just have such a long history of just trying a bunch of things, and they kind of know what works. And then when you're unsuspecting, when you're taking a shot, then you just get hit, and then you have to go back and you have to like recalibrate your game and then go back until one side gives, either the new guy gives up or the older guy gets outwitted by the new guy, which both things happen like all the time. Usually the newer guy gets beat down. Do you have any other games that you are interested in for the future?
Any other games between poker and chess? Well, yeah, I mean, I like Mafia, and I never really got into the werewolves craze that a lot of poker players got into. But I guess now that I'm playing some Mafia, I like it. I like the really nice combination of these types of social, what are they called? Like social elimination games or something, or
I don't know the genre name, but I know what you mean. It's like,
yeah, there's a name for it and it's escaping me right now, but maybe somebody else can mention it in the chat if they can think of it. Social cooperation games maybe, but I like those because it reminds me a lot of poker in that, there's like this bluff to value ratio in poker, right? And you need to be value betting more often than you're bluffing. And in these social cooperation games, it's the same thing. Usually there's like 2 or 3 mafia members and 7 citizens. So you're telling the truth 70% of the time and bluffing 30% of the time. And I find that to be like an interesting exercise. And also it kind of reminds me of what a poker game would be like if you had to talk all the time. Because if you're a telebox and you don't talk, okay, that mitigates a lot. Because talking is obviously where you're going to be giving away the most, right? Like having an actual conversation. Whereas when you play these games, you kind of have to talk all the time. So I find that really interesting. That's why I think people like who are used to talking at the table nonstop, like Daniel Negreanu, or I don't know, who else talks all the time at the table these days?
Helmet, it's Sfindiari. Nowadays, Garrett Adelstein, who plays a lot in Live with the Bike.
Yeah, like people like that, like Garrett and all these, that would be really good at a game like that because you're used to just talking all the time for ages and not lying. I like what other games do I like? I like some like chess variants, but I'm not really one to like gravitate towards like playing new games that much. I kind of like
the classics.
I like kind of learning more new things about the ones that I already love.
That's definitely a good way to get better and keep things fresh. Wasn't there a format that started catching on during the pandemic, a format of chess?
Oh yeah, there's a couple of things like four player chess was one thing. Yeah, that was definitely catching on. I didn't play it though. I think the chess board is the perfect size, 8x8, 64 squares. But I'm sure it would be fun if I actually played it. But it's one of those things you got to just jump in and see how it goes, because you can't really learn things like that just by watching them. You got to jump in.
Right, chat. If you have any questions, put them in there, and we'll have Jennifer answer them. Do you have any favorite white openings or?
Well, I like to play e4 usually, and Sicilian tends to be my favorite opening for both colors. So if black plays a Sicilian, I like that, and if white plays a Sicilian, I mean, if I'm white and if I'm white and my opponent plays a Sicilian, I'm happy, and if I'm black and I get to play the Sicilian, I'm happy. Let's see. What if poker removed hand signals and you had to verbalize everything? How many winning players would become losing players? I think they would figure out how to standardize that, so they'd probably be okay. I think you had to verbalize just the calls and the bets. It might be difficult for people at first, but I think they would start to just practice in front of a mirror and get it standardized. But to actually have full conversations, I think that would be really hard. That's very difficult.
Do you have any favorite aspects? What aspects about poker do you find the most interesting?
What aspects of poker? What aspects? What do you mean? What types of?
What parts of poker do you find the most interesting?
I find the theory of poker pretty interesting. I mean, obviously it's been greatly explored because there's a lot of money to be made for it, and you think if everything was explored to the depth that this card game was explored, how much progress we make. But I still find some of the idea of an equilibrium strategy to be kind of a fascinating aspect of poker, because it reminds me of chess, where you reach this checkmate or perpetual check, even, where there's just an infinite loop, or you're exploiting, counter exploiting, and there's this tension, and it creates an equilibrium. I like that. I like it, even though it's nerdy. That's one of the reasons I made the grid. I made the poker grid because I actually find that to be the most beautiful thing about poker, because it reminds me of chess. And of course, it's problematic because the more people who study this way of poker and actually master and incorporate it, the harder it is for other people to make money. So I get that it can have its problems, but from just an intellectual point of view, I do find it very nice.
Have you question SS the G asks you, have you ever played shogi, the Japanese chess?
I don't think I've played that. I was once in the mind sport games in China, and I played Chinese chess, but I don't think I learned. Oh yeah, I did actually once play shogi. I was invited to an event and they taught me how to play. But as you can see, I don't have a great memory of it. But it's if I had more time, I would love to learn all those chess variants, because I think by learning variants, you learn more about the actual game.
Do you have any opinions between on the differences between Chinese chess and chess, American chess?
There's no queen in Chinese chess, right? I don't play very well. It's been ages since I played. When I was in China, I played it a little bit, but I heard it's very tactical, so that the thing about chess is there's this wonderful balance of tactics and strategy, and it's very delicate. You don't know whether you should be looking for a tactical move or a strategic move, and that's kind of the fun, that you have to figure out not only what the best move is, but what kind of move you should make, right? And I love that about chess. Now, I can't really speak to Chinese chess and say it's not true for that, but I have heard that the Chinese chess is a little bit more tactical, and that's why a lot of the Chinese players in the generation where they learned Chinese chess first were very, very good tacticians.
That's probably true, but one of the problems with Chinese chess, or not, I wouldn't say problems, one of the game design limitations is when the pieces start getting removed from the board, and the pawns hit the end, it's the terminal sense of the game hasn't much variation. Whereas in American chess, when the pawns hit the end, they could become queens, and you can. So that's a very, very big difference where it's. Yeah.
where the end game in chess, there's such a rich study of it. Yeah, indeed, Mick Packard's boy. It was my brother who beat Tom Dwan when he had a missing rook. So Greg started without a rook, and he still won the game.
Professional.
And there was a lot of money on that game, so it's a famous story. Actually, I talked about that with Greg in my episode of The Grid as well. So we covered that.
Okay, well, thank you for your time. We're going to link the grid below and also Ladies Night below. And
Oh, thank you.
I think the next time, at least I'll see you, is probably in Mafia. So I'm a citizen.
No,
No matter.
Read your cards next time.
It's the software's fault. Whatever I actually am, I'm citizen. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's hard. It's like there's always a time where you forget what you had. I know that's why like you have to recheck your cards. We've had at least two guests I think on the grid tell stories about forgetting what they had. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, and we will see you in. I'll see you in your podcast in Mafia, and I'll be checking for your posts on Twitter.
Yes, definitely. We got to get you on the grid before 169 hands are done. And yeah, till then, I can't wait till this is all over and we have a chance to see each other in Vegas or LA and get that chess.com and
poker game going.
Chess game going on in the live at play. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It will be. All right. Thank you guys. Peace out.